I mustered a hesitant smile as the yellow taxi pulled over, its tires screeching on the desolate street. The city lights cast eerie shadows on the unfamiliar surroundings, but I was relieved to have found a cab. The driver, with a grin that seemed to conceal more than it revealed, gestured toward the back seat, welcoming me into the worn leather interior. As I settled into the dimly lit cab, an uneasy feeling crept over me. The driver's gaze lingered in the rearview mirror, his eyes obscured by the shadows of the brim of his hat. Ignoring my discomfort, I gave him the address, hoping the ride would be swift and uneventful. The taxi cruised through empty streets, the rhythmic hum of the engine creating an unsettling backdrop. Unease settled in the pit of my stomach, amplified by the driver's silence. I glanced at the meter, which seemed to be ticking away at an unusually rapid pace. My discomfort grew when the taxi took an unexpected turn, veering away from the familiar route. Panic clawed at my throat as the city lights faded behind us, leaving only the cold glow of flickering street lamps on a deserted road. I demanded an explanation, but the driver remained silent, his grin morphing into something more sinister. As we ventured deeper into the isolated darkness, my mind raced with thoughts of escape. The taxi's interior felt like a suffocating trap, and the shadows seemed to close in with every passing mile. Desperation pushed me to reach for my phone, but a sinking realization settled in. The signal was non-existent. I insisted the driver stop, my pleas escalating into frantic demands. His response was a guttural chuckle that sent shivers down my spine. The taxi came to an abrupt halt in a desolate area, surrounded by nothing but looming trees and the suffocating silence of the night. With trembling hands, I fumbled for the door handle, only to find it locked. Panic set in as I pounded on the window, the driver's twisted laughter echoing in the confined space. Desperation fueled my determination, and I kicked at the door until it finally gave way. I stumbled out of the taxi, my breath visible in the chilly night air. The driver, now revealed in the dim glow of the moonlight, wore a maniacal grin that sent a chill down my spine. I sprinted into the darkness, guided only by the faint glimmer of distant city lights. As I looked back, the fake taxi sat ominously on the deserted road, its interior cloaked in shadows. The driver, an embodiment of malevolence, watched me escape with an unsettling calmness. The city lights beckoned in the distance, but the horror of that night lingered, a chilling reminder that some readers should never be taken, and the darkness within. A seemingly innocuous taxi could be more terrifying than the unknown streets it traverses. The neon glow of the city reflected off rain-slicked streets as I flagged down a cab. The yellow vehicle screeched to a halt, its windows tinted to obscure any view of the driver. Wary but undeterred, I hopped into the back seat, sharing my destination with a driver whose face remained hidden in the shadows. The interior was eerily silent, broken only by the relentless patter of rain on the roof. As we navigated through dimly lit streets, unease nestled itself in the pit of my stomach. Glancing at the meter, I noticed the numbers ticking away at an alarming rate, far surpassing what a typical cab ride should cost. I questioned the exorbitant fare, but the driver's response was a low guttural chuckle that sent a shiver down my spine. The city lights blurred into streaks as the cab sped through alleys and side streets, deviating farther from the familiar route. The unease grew into a primal fear when I realized that the cab was taking me to an abandoned industrial area. Desperation clawed at my throat as I demanded the driver stop, but my pleas were met with silence. The cab rolled to a halt in the desolate darkness, surrounded by looming warehouses and the distant hum of machinery. With trembling hands, I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as I realized I was trapped in this sinister taxi. The driver's laughter echoed, the sound filling the air like a malevolent symphony. In a last-ditch effort, I reached for my phone, only to discover there was no signal. The driver turned to face me, and a cold chill swept through the air. His face, obscured until now, was a mask of twisted malevolence. Shadows danced in his hollow eyes as he reveled in my terror. Fear constricted my chest as I realized this was no ordinary cab ride. Suddenly, the cab lurched forward, hurtling toward a dilapidated warehouse. I screamed, the sound swallowed by the night. The vehicle came to a sudden stop, the abruptness throwing me against the seat. The driver's door creaked open, and he stepped out, revealing a sinister grin that sent shivers down my spine. Desperation fueled my escape as I kicked at the door, eventually breaking free. I stumbled out into the rain-soaked night, the city lights shimmering in the distance. The cab sat like a malevolent sentinel, its engine growling in the darkness. The city lights flickered in the late hours, and I hailed a cab to escape the biting cold. The taxi that pulled up was a vintage relic, its paint chipped and faded, but I shrugged off any reservations and climbed into the worn back seat. The driver's face was obscured by the dim glow of the dashboard, and a strange musky odor lingered in the air. As we traversed the labyrinthine streets, I couldn't shake the sensation that the city outside was changing. Buildings morphed into towering monoliths, their architecture resembling something ancient and otherworldly. The fare meter ticked away at an inexplicable rate, the numbers dancing like spectral apparitions in the gloom of the cab. Unease gnawed at my gut, and I noticed an odd reflection in the rearview mirror, an unsettling figure with hollow eyes and a contorted grin. I asked the driver about the bizarre changes in the city, but my inquiries were met with eerie silence. The air thickened with an unspoken tension, and the vintage taxi seemed to navigate through dimensions beyond my comprehension. Abruptly, the taxi screeched to a halt in a part of town I couldn't recognize. The streets were deserted, and an otherworldly fog clung to the air. A foreboding chill seeped through the cracks of the worn upholstery. As the driver turned to me, his eyes now void of any humanity, he muttered cryptic words, a language unknown to mortal ears, and the very fabric of reality seemed to warp around us. Desperation gripped me as I fumbled for the door handle, but it refused to yield. Panic set in when the driver's form began to distort, his figure elongating into an impossible silhouette. The taxi transformed into a surreal vessel, hurtling through a nightmarish realm where the rules of physics and reason were discarded. I glimpsed twisted landscapes outside the cab window, monstrous creatures, bizarre structures that defied logic, and a sky that shifted between hues unseen by mortal eyes. The driver's voice echoed hauntingly, narrating tales of forgotten realms and eldritch horrors. As the cab journeyed through the surreal abyss, as the taxi surged forward, reality itself seemed to unravel. Time warped, and the boundaries between dimensions blurred into a disorienting kaleidoscope. The strange odyssey felt like an eternity, an unending descent into the surreal unknown. Abruptly, the taxi came to a halt, and the driver's distorted form melted away. I stumbled out into a familiar city street, the vintage cab disappearing into the urban landscape like a ghostly apparition. The once ancient buildings had returned to their mundane forms, and the surreal fog lifted. Dazed and disoriented, I found myself back in the tangible world, the haunting echoes of the eldritch journey lingering in my mind. The vintage taxi, a conduit to dimensions beyond comprehension, had granted me a glimpse into the cosmic horror that lurks just beneath the surface of our everyday reality. The night had unfolded like a fever dream, a journey through the cosmic tapestry that left me questioning the nature of existence itself.